Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Andy Hunter. I'm the founder of Ministry Vitals, and the purpose of this video is to basically share with you what I cover during our onboarding calls with our clients who opt for the priority onboarding. They receive a one-on-one Zoom training call, and what I want to do in this video is essentially walk through what I cover with our clients during those calls so that you can get a perspective of how the system works, how it's set up, and how you can manage the data going forward in the back end. So I'm sharing my screen, and on this screen, this is the front-end assessment for a particular client. And the way it works is you would share the URL on your website, in your emails, whatever media you use to get that link out to your congregants. This is the URL that they would go to. I'm going to show you in the back end. When we go flip to the back end, I'm going to show you where you can find that URL. So don't be concerned about that right now. But just understand that they all go to the same URL. The URL never changes. So we're here on a login form for the assessment. And this particular client is integrated with Planning Center. So ServeWire will integrate with Planning Center. It will integrate with Church Community Builder. It will integrate with Touchpoint software. And you can also set it up in a standalone or generic mode. So you can actually use it without having to integrate with any CHMS. In this example, they're integrated with Planning Center. So the congregant will come to this page and they'll enter their first name, last name, and email address, and that'll trigger a link to their inbox. They'll go open that email and click on the link, and it will open their browser and initiate the assessment. So the assessment will load on their browser, and this example consists of 5 sections: our default shape test, spiritual gifts, heart, abilities, personality style, and experience. So they'll walk through each one of those sections of the assessment, and when they get to the end and they click the submit button, a number of things will happen. First, the page will refresh and they'll see the results on the screen. They'll see what was calculated based on how they answered the statements for spiritual gifts. They'll see what they checked off for heart and ability. They'll see what their personality style is depending on which assessment you go with. In this example, it's a Myers-Briggs style assessment, so ENTJ, INTJ, and so on. And then what they answered for the questions in the experience section. So all of that will show on the screen. The second thing that happens at the same time is they receive an email in their inbox with all of those results, so they can refer back to that in the future if they want to. And then the third thing that happens is all of this information gets pushed to Planning Center. So when you logged in as an administrator to ServeWire and you authorized the integration with Planning Center, it automatically created what's called custom tabs within Planning Center. So all of the data gets pushed to these custom tabs against the person's profile. So you can use that for within Planning Center to run some cool automations and workflows however you manage your Planning Center database. You can use that data for whatever purpose or ways you want to use it. I'm not an expert in Planning Center, so I can't tell you how to use that, but that data is available there for you to use. And then finally, obviously the last thing is that all of this data gets stored within ServeWire for you as a ServeWire administrator to be able to access in the future. So on that note, let's now flip to the back end. We're going to log into the admin area of ServeWire, and I'm going to walk you through how the platform works, how it was configured, how we set it up and customized it, and what you can do with the data going forward. Because for example, on this page we're looking at right here, you may want to customize this. You may want to change the logo or change the text that shows up above that login box. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that now. So let's flip to the back end. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the navigation bar of ServeWire from left to right. So this is just the getting started page. This is basically just a general help area. This page is going to be changing in the near future. We're developing some metrics and we're going to build out some more useful information on this particular screen. On the next tab is the integration section. Now this is kind of a set it and forget it type screen. So as I said in this example, they're integrated with Planning Center. So the admin would have logged into ServeWire. They would have clicked what was a blue button that says authorize PCO. They would have clicked that and they would have authorized the integration with their Planning Center database, and that did that connection so that we can then push that data to Planning Center. So again, set it and forget it type screen. If you're using Church Community Builder, this screen looks slightly different, and it would also look different for Touchpoint or the generic setup. We'll cover that in a separate video. So that's the integration settings. Now let's look at settings. So what really differentiates ServeWire from our competitors is the flexibility that we give you to be able to customize things. So we've got a lot going on under the settings area. So we're going to walk through this sub menu from left to right. And we're here in the header settings, and this is essentially where you can upload your own church logo, change the background color. You can do that all here. If during the setup we didn't pull the right logo for your church, then you can just click on upload logo and add a new logo, and it would replace the one that's there. You'll notice here off to the left we have this box that says hide resources section from front-end users. Essentially, this is a new feature that we added to ServeWire where you can put additional content in front of your congregants when they complete the assessment. So when they click the submit button and the page refreshes and they see the results, what they would also see across that top navigation bar, if we go back here, there would be a link here that's called resources. In fact, you could call it whatever you want. You could call it getting started, next steps, resources. It's essentially a content area where you can put additional training. It might be related to spiritual gifts or personality style or any other information that you want your congregants to be aware of. They could then click on that link and then access that content. If you wanted to take advantage of that, it's disabled by default. You would uncheck this box, and remember that anytime you make a change to any one of these sub pages, you always have to click the save button. I'm not going to do that right now because I'm just going to leave it as is, but I would uncheck this box, click the save button, then I would go to resources and add the information in this content area. It's kind of like a word editor screen. You can put in text, images, embed a video, and so on. Any information, links that you want to be able to provide information to your congregants, and here's where you would change resources to next steps or getting started. So now let's go back and continue on here. So we're going to go to the next section is test display settings. So the important areas on this screen are on the left hand side. This is the content that shows up on the login form. So for example, if I go back to the front end and I wanted to add some additional instruction with this sentence, I would do so right here in this box. So I just come in here and I'd start typing. I'm not going to save this, so I don't want to mess things up, but you just type in, and if I wanted to make that a hyperlink, I could just click on this link and add a link to that, and it would show up. And then what I would want to do then is go back down to the bottom and click that blue save button, and then come back here, refresh the page, and I would see that whatever changes I just made show up right here. You can do the same thing on the results screen. So when they click the submit button and the page refreshes and they see all the results, this is the statement that they see. Congratulations on completing the SHAPE assessment and some further instruction. If you've got a unique workflow where you commit to reaching out to the individual within 24 hours after they've completed the assessment, then you can put that instruction on this page. Now you'll also see that the last sentence says, to view the volunteer positions that are a best match for you, click the button below. So ServeWire has an entirely optional positions module, and we're going to cover that in a separate video because it deserves its full attention in a separate video. But essentially what you can do is you can create volunteer positions that your congregants can see, and not only that, but you can match them to qualifications based on how they've completed the assessment. So for example, let's say you were looking for a drummer in your worship and arts department. Well, obviously they have to have the ability to play the drums, but maybe you also want that particular individual to have the spiritual gift of evangelism. Well, you can set those as qualifications for the position of drummer that you create. And then when, let's say, Joe comes along, he's new to your church, he completes the shape assessment, and when he clicks the submit button, he sees the submit, and he sees his results. He happened to have the ability to play the drums, and he raised his hand for that. He checked off the box, and he, based on how he answered the statements for the spiritual gifts section, one of his top 3 spiritual gifts was evangelism. Well, chances are he's a good fit for the position of drummer. And if he had to click on the button after the instructions here that says to view the volunteer positions that are best matched for you, click on the button below. He clicks that button, the page would refresh, and it would list all of your volunteer positions that you've loaded into ServeWire. And that top position at the top of the list would likely be drummer. And he might be a 90 or a 92% fit based on whatever qualifications you set for the role. And he would see that, and there'd be a button there that says apply, and Joe knows that, I love playing the drums. I've been interested in doing this. This is a great opportunity with a new church. I'm going to click that apply button and send a message off to the leader requesting a meeting. So that automates the process of helping your congregates identify their gifts, their talents and abilities, and moving them along to some sort of serving capacity. So that's the whole idea behind the volunteers position. Now, by default, the volunteers position is turned on, but what we recognize is a lot of our clients, church clients who sign up for ServeWire, kind of step into this in 2 phases. They'll usually make sure their assessment, they're perfectly happy with that, and they'll launch that, and then in the meantime they'll go back and compile all the information for their volunteer position so they can load all that information in and then launch the positions module separately. But then we do also have a minority group of our customers who want to do it all at once. So they'll take the time, they won't launch the shape assessment right away. They'll get all their positions in, and then they'll launch everything together. So depending on what you want to do here, if you want to wait and do it all together, then there's nothing you need to change. But if you decide to launch your assessment and not use the positions module at all, or use it down the road, then you'll want to take a couple of extra steps. And the first thing is you want to delete this statement that's right here, and then scroll up and click Hide Positions button on the test results page. So you click that, and you would delete that sentence, and then you click the Save button. And that'll remove it and won't confuse your users. They won't see a button that they click on and go to a page where there's no positions listed. So that is the positions module. There's one extra step when it comes to disabling positions, and that's under the email notifications, which we're going to look at now. So I'm going to click on Test Notifications. And in this example, we have the member of your church, the staff person. It's likely you who signed up for ServeWire, so you'd be your name in here, along with a valid church email address, so the sender name and sender email address. And in this example, because we're integrated with Planning Center, there's 2 emails involved. The first one is the email that goes out sending them their unique link to begin the assessment, which is this email right here. And then the next email is the email they get with the results embedded in it. So you can customize each one of these emails. You can change the subject line and the content within the email. But there's an important thing to point out here when it comes to these emails, and that is what's called dynamic tokens. So for example, in both emails we have hi first name. First name will actually pull the person's name and embed it and replace first name with their actual name. So it would say, hello Joe, as requested, here's your link to take our shape assessment. And in the second email, we have a few extra tokens. If I scroll down here, you'll see here are the results of your assessment, and then this token called test results. You do not want to remove that token from the email, because that's what embeds their unique test results directly in the email. Otherwise, they get an email and it doesn't include their test results. Likewise, the next token down is position link. So we just talked about how if you wanted to disable positions from your assessment, you do want to remove this token. So you would just delete it from the email and click the Save button if you're not using the positions, or you're launching without the positions and you're going to do it later. Then you'd have to come back in and add it back in when you're ready to launch your positions. So I hope that makes sense. If you struggle with that, submit a support ticket. One of our staff members would be happy to set it up for you. Okay, so that is the test display and test notifications. The position display and position notifications works the same way. So if I click on position display settings, we've got a couple of content areas if you want to customize that. Under position notifications, same thing, sender name, sender email address, and a couple of emails that you can customize if you like. We've already talked about resources. The last thing under settings that I just want to touch on is under email integration. Now, ServeWire doesn't have a built-in email system. We rely on an email sender to be able to send out emails from our platform. So if you have somebody on staff who has a tech background, who knows where they can log into your hosting platform, where your website's hosted, and grab what's called SMTP details, they could certainly come back into ServeWire here, enter the host name, username, password, the port, and so on, and click the SMTP settings, and then click Save. But you'll see that every time we set this up for you, we've got it set up under a third-party sender called SendGrid. SendGrid is a very reputable sending platform. And we enter a unique API key, and essentially what this means is when you receive the configure test from us and you're ready to use it or ready to test the test, the emails are going to hit your inbox. So it's going to work because we've set it up to go through SendGrid. But you may still want to change that over to SMTP to ensure to the best of your ability that emails are getting in the inbox and not in somebody's spam box. So that's email integration. So that's the settings. We've got a lot of features in there that you can customize, and depending on your workflow and branding and so on, whatever messaging you want to use, you can do all of that under settings. So now let's move on to the test and how that was configured. Under the tests, we have the ability to create what's called test sections. So each component of a shape test, there's 5 components, are a separate section. There's a section for spiritual gifts, there's one for heart, ability, personality, and experience. But you can create an unlimited number of sections if you like, or you could just have one section for your test. So if always you were concerned about was a spiritual gifts test, then you would only be focusing on this one section. When you complete our onboarding form, you tell us what it is you want included on your test, and most of our clients choose the shape test. Some may only choose spiritual gifts, but we'll configure it however you want it, and that's what you'll see on this list. So in this example, we actually have 6 sections, but our client decided to play around a little bit and see with an additional personality style test just to see how it worked, and they decided to launch that separately from a full shape test. So each one of these sections is editable. So for example, under heart, if I click edit, this is the list of items that your congregant will see and check off as something that they're passionate about. So you can scroll down this list, and let's say you looked at this list and you realize there's a number of passions that are not on this list that you want to add. Well, you do that by simply clicking on the green button and typing in the name of whatever it is that you want to add to the list. And whenever you make changes here, you always remember to click the save button. Likewise, if you recognize a couple in here that you don't want to have, you just click the red minus button and confirm by clicking the yes, and the page will refresh and it'll automatically remove that from your list. Now let's go back to build a test, and you can edit the spiritual gifts section as well. Now it's a little different because it's what's called a Likert scale of 1 to 5. So for each spiritual gift, you have to have corresponding statements that affirm that gift. So our default shape test has a number of spiritual gifts, and it has 5 statements for each that affirm each spiritual gift. So you can edit the statements, but if you want to remove a statement, then you have to make sure that you have the same number of statements for each gift. So each gift has 5. If you decide you intentionally want to remove one, then you either have to replace it with another statement or delete one of the statements for each of the spiritual gifts. So instead of having 5 per statement, you would only have 5 per spiritual gift. You only have 4 per spiritual gift. And that makes sure that the math works right when it's calculating what the spiritual gifts are based on how somebody answers each statement. Now, if you look at this list and you say spiritual gifts of tongues, interpretation of tongues, is a value to your church and you want to add that, you can do that by scrolling down to the bottom, and you would click the plus sign again and enter the name of the spiritual gift and a statement, and you would do that 5 times, 5 statements for the gift of tongues. Then there's one final step, and that is to go to under step 2, create definitions. Under step 2, here's where the user will see the explanation of what the gift is when they're interpreting the results. So you just scroll down to the bottom and you would click the plus sign again, select gift of tongues from this list, and enter the description that you want to add there. If you struggle with that, reach out to our support desk. One of our staff members would be happy to add a new spiritual gift for you. So back to the list of sections again. Now that you've got your sections all completed, and in this example they're synced with Planning Center. So let me add that if you decided to edit one that's already synced, what will happen is the status here will change to not synced. It'll turn red, it'll say not synced, and all you have to do is click the sync to PCO button again. And essentially what that's doing is it's going out and pushing the new update to your Planning Center custom tabs so that there's always a one-to-one relationship with what's in ServeWire to what the fields are within those custom tabs within Planning Center. So you always have to do that extra step. That extra step only needs to be done for Planning Center. So now let's go to step number 2, create tests. So we've got the different sections of our test. Now what we're going to do is build out a unique test link that you can then post on your website, include in your emails, whatever media you use to get that link out there. So we're going to click on step 2. And in this example here for this client, you can see that not only do we have a full shape test built, but the client decided to test out what each one would look like individually. So they decided that they would create links, a separate link for each test in case they wanted to have a model where you invited people to a class once per week, and each week you covered a separate section of the assessment and helped them to flush out and identify what their spiritual gifts are, perhaps what their passions are, understanding their unique talents and abilities, and then type of experience and so on. So they could do those one-on-one together in a class environment and just focus on one section of the test separately. But most of our clients usually use one test link and they compile all the sections together. So this is where you would go to get that unique link. So you grab that link, and that's the link you would use going forward. And what's nice about our platform is if you decide to change anything down the road, you never have to go back in and create a new test link. The link that you've posted and published on your website will never have to be edited or changed. So people will always go to the same one, because all you need to do is click the edit button. And let's say now, instead of having all 5 sections, I just want to strip it down to spiritual gifts. So I'm going to click that and click Save Changes. And now what you see is our spiritual gift, our sections included now only includes spiritual gifts. I'm going to go back and change this because I don't want to mess it up for our client. So I'm going to select those 5 sections, click Save Changes, and there we have it. We've got all of our sections back in the assessment. So that is the test itself. Now let's pretend that you're perfectly happy with your shape assessment and you launch, and it is a week later and you've got 5, 10, 100 people who've gone through and taken the assessment. You've got some data to look at. What does that data tell you? Well, you can look at this information in one of 3 ways. First, you can look at it by individual. So we're going to navigate to the results screen, and under results you can see a tabular listing of everybody who's taken the assessment to date. So you'll see the name of the test they took, their name, their email address, the date they took it, and then under details I can click the results button and I can see the results of their assessment. So I can scroll down and I can see what the calculations were in this example. This is just the spiritual gifts assessment. So I can see what was calculated for spiritual gifts based on how this individual answered the spiritual gifts statements. I can also, if enabled with positions, I can click on the percent fit button and I can actually see what the percent fit is for this particular individual based on how they answered the statements, the spiritual gifts section. And I can see what their percent fit is, and I could also see if they've actually gone ahead and applied for any one of those positions as well. Because we're integrated with Planning Center, you have the ability to resend the results to those custom tabs. This is only useful if you've switched if you've been using ServeWire and you switched like from CCB to Planning Center, and then you want to push all those historical results, you come in here and click the button for each individual. Under email results, you could resend that results email to the individual if by chance they said they reached out to you and said, hey, I didn't receive my email, can you resend it to me? Maybe it ended up in their spam and they just don't know where to go to look, or perhaps it didn't hit their inbox at all. You could click that resend button to resend that same email to them. The last thing about this particular screen that's useful to you is you can actually see not only if they've completed it, but if it's incomplete. So if you looked at the metrics here and you saw that your percent completed was only like 50%, well, you've got a real problem. Only half the people who are going through and taking the assessment are actually following through and getting to the end of the assessment. So you've got a problem, and that problem might be that perhaps the assessment's too long for your congregation and they're just not following through and completing it. Or perhaps they're getting to the personality section and they're saying like, whoa, this is a little too personal for me, I'm not going to answer these statements, and they just close their browser and they don't continue. So it's useful for you to be able to monitor that, to know what the completion rate is, and you might have to make some adjustments to your assessment. The other thing too is you can look at it by individual and say, you look at this and you see Mary tried to take the assessment 2 weeks ago and she's still incomplete, and you happen to know Mary, you know her heart, and you also know that she has a newborn at home, and maybe she was halfway through completing the assessment and her baby started crying and she stepped away from her computer and she never got back, and her older son came along, closed down her computer, and she never completed it. So you reach out to Mary and say, hey Mary, I noticed you tried to take your assessment, I know your heart and you want to serve, so here's the link so you can pick up where you left off. So that's a usefulness of that particular screen. Okay, so that's by individual. Now, what about this data tell you about your congregation as a whole? Well, you can look at that on the analytics screen. So on the analytics screen, you're going to see two charts in a moment. The chart on the left always generates week over week how many people are completing the assessment and also how many are not. Now this chart on the left is useful to you as the person who's subscribed to ServeWire, because let's say, for example, you've put a lot of time and energy into promoting your SHAPE assessment to your congregation, and you look at this chart and the last person that took the assessment was 6 months ago, and you're coming up on renewal, the annual renewal for ServeWire, and you say you have to make a decision. Are we going to renew? And you can look at this chart and realize you put a whole lot of effort into this and people just are not taking the assessment. So it doesn't make sense for you to renew with us. So you just reach out to our support desk and let us know that you want to cancel, and we'll be happy to cancel that prior to the renewal fee going through. So that's the chart on the left. Now the chart on the right is useful in terms of demographics based on a specific section of the test. So I can select the test, and in this example I'm going to select the spiritual gifts only, and there's only one section, so I'm going to click apply filter. And now what this tells me is, of those say 100 people who've gone through and taken the assessment, this tells me where we score really high in spiritual gifts and where it's not so high. And this could be useful for you. For example, let's say you know you're doing a building expansion in the near future, and you look at the data and it tells you are based on the 100 people who've gone through and taken the assessment, if that's representative of the population of your congregation, and the data tells you that one of the lowest gifts is the gift of giving, then perhaps that might influence what you need to do for an upcoming sermon series on the importance of giving. So that's one way you can look at this. Another way, for example, is if you were to select abilities, you could look at overall who said they had abilities in the trades, because you might want volunteers to help with the building expansion. Plumbers, carpenters, electricians. So you could filter based on abilities and then look at those individuals as well. And maybe that data will tell you, yeah, there have been lots of people who raised their hand, said, yep, I am a carpenter, I'm an electrician, or so on. And you can reach out to those individuals. So that's one way, an indicator to tell if those people exist. So, which leads to the third way of using ServeWire, and that's generating custom reports to identify those individuals. So now let's click on Reports. And under Reports, here you see we have two examples. I'm going to create a temporary report and call it Temp. And I'm going to select my test name. Let's select Shape. Now what we're going to do is we're going to define criteria. So I'm looking for, let's say I'm looking for the tradesman to help with the building expansion. So I'm looking for somebody with the ability who says they have either, let's scroll down this list of abilities, and I'm going to select skill of construction, as well as, let's say, carpentry and electrician. Yeah, that's good. So I'll select those three. And so I've identified anybody who raised their hand and said, I have one or more of these three abilities, but I'm also want them. It's important that I also, we're going to select and, has the spiritual gift of, yeah, let's say administration, and I want them to have scored greater than 80%. So it's a relatively strong gift of theirs. So now I've got this criteria defined that says I'm looking for any individual who completed the assessment who checked off either the ability, the skill as in construction, electrician, or carpentry, and scored greater than 80% in the gift of administration. That's the ideal person to fill this particular role. So now when I click Save, I've got a predefined report that will identify those individuals. So now if I click View, likely nothing shows up here because nobody triggered that criteria. But if they did, I'd see a listing of those individuals as well as what their percent fit was for that particular role. So that is how you create a custom report. You could then download that report as a CSV file, give it to somebody on staff, and they could reach out to those individuals one-on-one and invite them in for a conversation about what it would look like to serve in that capacity. So the last screen that I want to show you now before we wrap up this video is under Users. So under Users, the person at the bottom of the list in this example is the person who subscribed for ServeWire. So they were the person who basically signed up, entered their credit card details, and they are the original admin. But you can add additional admins, people who have the same level of superpowers that you do, and basically that I just showed you. Everything I just did during this video is everything that you as an administrator are able to do within ServeWire. So if you wanted to add additional staff members as administrators in the platform, you would click on New User, and then you would enter their email address, first, last name, and select their role. And so you'd set them up as an administrator. But you'll also notice here that we have a role called leader. So a leader doesn't have quite the same level of superpower as you. They can't go in and create a task and edit a task, but they can log into the back end. They can create positions and manage positions, but they can't edit or delete the test need. They can't mess anything up that would cause you some grief down the road. So you set them up as a leader. That's useful. Let's say you have a lay leader who oversees a particular ministry area. They're not part of your staff, but you still want them to log in to be able to manage those positions for their area of ministry. So you'd set them up as a leader. That is everything that I cover during onboarding calls, with the exception of any questions that people have during this call. So that's the value behind the onboarding calls, and it's entirely optional service that we offer that people have the ability to take advantage of when they first sign up for ServeWire. That's it. If you have any questions after watching this video, you can submit a support ticket at our help desk, and we'll be happy to help you.